I see the same mistakes being made over and over again. Hi, I'm Joe, and welcome to MotorCity Boat Works. Let's get to work. To our returning subscribers, I want to say welcome back to the Werks. If you're new to the channel, the boat behind me is a 1986 Albin 27 family cruiser. We call it a pocket trawler because it can be towed and launched on a trailer by the do-it-yourself owner. I'm restoring the boat from a bare hull, and every week I usually put up some type of an episode about a project or something unusual that I'm doing on the boat. You know, I recently did an episode where I talked about the 10 tips for ensuring that your amateur boat restoration or your amateur boat building project goes smoothly. I've been getting a lot of feedback and a lot of questions from people. They want to know what I think about this YouTube boat restoration or this boat building project on the internet. It's not my place to comment on those, but I will tell you that I often see very common mistakes that people are making as they're going about their projects.
Oh, this guy again. He's always bossy. He hurts my feelings.
Now, I promise you, we are not here to laugh at anyone who has made these mistakes. I'll be honest with you, I have made every single one of these mistakes at some time during my amateur boat restoration and boat building career.
I don't know what I was thinking. I make the videos, everything looks all sexy, it looks like he knows what he's doing, and then I do stupid stuff like this.
I want to point these out because I think it's a teaching moment, and there's an opportunity for everyone to remind themselves about the things you got to be on the lookout for, the mistakes that you don't want to make. You want to ensure that your boat building project or that your amateur boat restoration goes off without a hitch.
Pay attention. Don't make the 10 mistakes of amateur boat restoration.
The first mistake I see amateur boat restorers make is they choose a boat that's too big.
Come on, the bigger the better, right?
Choosing a large boat creates a lot of problems for the amateur boat restorer or boat builder. You've got to figure out, where are you going to park the boat? How are you going to store it? How will you be able to move it around or to take things on and off the boat? A large boat that's 10, 15, 20 feet off the ground creates all sorts of problem for the do-it-yourself owner. They fail to think about, what are they going to do with an 8-foot keel? How are they going to park the boat once they even get it restored? Large boats are expensive. They can really be difficult for a beginning do-it-yourselfer to manage. Stepping an oversized mast on your sailboat is not cheap or an easy feat. Ask me how I know. You've got to think about, what are the parts and components going to cost on a larger boat when compared to something that's a little bit smaller and quite a bit more manageable. If you make a mistake and choose a giant boat when you're not quite ready for such a large undertaking, you're dooming yourself to failing in your boat restoration. I know, we've seen it on YouTube before. A completely inexperienced boat owner goes out and buys the largest yacht that they could possibly find for their budget. And they never take into consideration, do they even need a boat that big? Do they even have the skills or the money or even the time to restore it properly?
Now, I'm not suggesting that you should never get a large boat. I'm simply saying that you need to think critically about the size boat you need and what are you really going to use it for.
A lot of new boat owners have dreams of sailing the oceans and traveling around the world on their newfound restored yacht. But the reality is that most of us will never leave sight of land. And if you choose a boat that's too large, you may doom yourself from ever even getting out on the water. The second mistake that people make when they're restoring an old boat is they choose a boat that really can't be saved. They end up choosing a turd.
It just needs a little bit of paint. It'll be fine.
I often see YouTubers and well-meaning individuals choose a boat to restore more out of an emotional need than any sort of common sense. They equate the boat that they've chosen as though it's some sort of a abandoned puppy. They don't want it to be left behind or forgotten. But the reality is that this is a very costly mistake. When you're choosing a boat to work on, make sure you pick something that's worthy of your time and effort. If you don't, you'll spend all your money and all of your effort trying to restore something that just isn't worthy. Some boats were ill-conceived from the factory. They were garbage back then, and they're still garbage today. Other boats, they've simply deteriorated too far for anyone to actually make much of a difference. It's time to let them kind of go by the wayside. It can be extremely difficult to tell what's a boat that's worth restoring and saving and what's an actual turd. You've really got to have a little bit of experience. You got to do your research, and you got to think about how much time and energy are you going to put into your restoration, and what do you hope to get out of it. If you choose a boat that is really a turd, you're going to end up spending all your time and money and get very little in return. Don't make the mistake of picking a turd. One of the biggest mistakes I see is people with no experience choosing relatively complex and large boat building or boat restoration projects.
I had no experience and I turned out just fine.
No matter what you see on YouTube, no matter how enticing the fantasy of building your own ocean cruising boat, I'm here to tell you that these projects are actually quite complicated. You have to start with some experience before you undertake one of these larger projects. So I know what you're asking yourself. You're wondering, how do I get experience if you're telling me not to work on a boat without any experience? Well, you've got to start small. You got to help a friend. You got to kind of be around boats just a little bit to get your feet wet, just so you have an idea of what it is that you're doing. I'm going to tell you, YouTube is not necessarily a great place to get how-to boat restoration information. Don't confuse lifestyle with how-to. I'm sure it sounds very outdated, but there are some really great books that tell you everything you need to know about restoring old sailboats and old power boats. You can find these books at your local library. You can buy your copies from Amazon. Learn from your mistakes. One of the reasons I always suggest that people start with a smaller boat to kind of work out the kinks in their process is you'll learn a whole lot simply by screwing up the first couple of times. And you don't want to do that on a much bigger, much more expensive project. Do yourself a favor. Try and restore a small rowboat, maybe a 15-foot skiff, before you undertake building your own pocket trawler or trying to build your ocean racer.
The fourth mistake I see boat builders and boat restorers do is they make their head too small. The bathroom is just not big enough.
I'll be honest with you, I like a lot of room when I'm taking care of business. Boat builders love to give us small boats with small heads, and then they give us bigger boats with even smaller heads. One of the things that I've done on my Albin 27 pocket trawler is to increase the size of the head on the boat. It came from the factory, just 3 feet by 3 feet, about 9 square feet, a very tiny space for a toilet, a shower, and a sink. I've expanded that out to more than 20 square feet. It's now 4 by 5 feet, and the shower will be separate and opposite of the toilet, almost like a small European bathroom. What I never understood was why someone would go through the trouble of building a very large boat, but then make the same mistakes that the manufacturers make when they're trying to market something to the masses. If you're going to build a 30, 40, 50-foot boat, well, you may as well make your head a little bit bigger, something that would be comfortable that you could use over a period of time and not feel like you're jammed into a tiny little broom closet.
What?
I know. You're probably saying, this guy, he's got some kind of obsession with the bathroom on his boat. But listen, I'm telling you, I've lived on a number of boats for a number of years. And the one thing that made staying on the boat long term even possible was having a normal size head, a normal size bathroom. It sounds kind of silly to talk about this small design feature, but it has a huge impact on your quality of life when you're on the boat. And it's not just for you. Your guests will thank you if you build a slightly larger bathroom. Let's be serious for a moment. One of the biggest mistakes that I see amateur boat restorers and amateur boat builders make has to do with safety. No one will ever accuse me of being a safety Nazi, but I need to remind you, when you're working in the shop or you're grinding away on your boat, you really gotta have some protective clothing in place. There are too many stories of people who have worked on fiberglass boats for extended periods of time, only to find out later on in their life that now they've developed cancer or they've got respiratory problems because they never took the necessary precautions when they first started out. You will see people on YouTube who don't wear protective clothing. They're grinding away on fiberglass in their bikini or their tank top, and they look really great, but you can only imagine what that fiberglass material is doing to their skin when they're off camera. This is one of those things that I'm particularly guilty of. I have to constantly remind myself to put on a respirator or wear some gloves when I'm doing any sort of grinding or cutting. Personal protective clothing is not just about having a respirator. You need to have gloves and eye protection, hearing protection, and you need to have a lot of ventilation, especially if you're working with flammable solvents. In the case of using two-part paints, you need to pay particular attention to the manufacturer's recommendations. Some of these products that you might use on restoring your boat, well, they can kill you if you're not paying attention to what you're doing. Safety is not just about wearing the proper protective clothing. Safety is about knowing your limits and when you need to take a break. If you've watched some of my other episodes, you've heard me talk about accidents that I've had working on my various boats. If you're tired, if you lose your concentration, if you're not 100% paying attention to what you're doing, you can really hurt yourself. This can be far more dangerous in the moment than any type of long-term exposure. One of the more common mistakes that I see amateur boat builders and boat restorers make is they end up using the wrong material for a given boat project. Just put a little RTV on it. It's all sticky. It's the same stuff. It can be tempting to try and cut corners and save money, but you don't want to use household repair items to try and restore your old boat. I'll give you an example. I often see well-meaning individuals suggest that you can use household sealants as caulking for your boat project. Silicone really has no place on any marine restoration. And the reason is because most of the silicone sealants that you come across, they're really not suitable for a marine environment. Household silicone products will break down over time in a marine environment. Silicone will leave behind a residue on the gel coat of your boat that makes it virtually impossible for any other sealant to attach to at a later date when someone tries to correct the poor repair that you did. There are specifically formulated marine sealants that are not that much more expensive that will really ensure your project is a success. Stick with conventional wisdom and use the appropriate materials for your boat restoration project. Another mistake amateurs love to make is they make their boat too complicated. All right, so follow me here because I'm only going to go through this once. What we're going to do is we're going to take the flux capacitor with these settings, we're going to run it through a half capacity Fluter-Schnagen valve, and then at 0.02513%, we use the dilithium crystals, which brings us back to the Wade-Johnson effect. I haven't invented that yet, but I'm working on it. And then from there, we're going to get to our energy source. It's going to power our boat. It'll be amazing and super economical. Did you get that? Does that make sense? You know, sometimes I'll get emails from amateur boat restorers, and they'll want to know if they can take their tuna boat and add some solar powered, convert to electricity, and then go ahead and run a compressed air engine to make their boat some sort of ultra eco-friendly, quasi-industrial fishing boat. And I gotta say, what are you, some type of mad scientist? I always tell people, go ahead and leave the invention to the airship captains and stick with just doing a normal, regular boat restoration. A sure way to go bankrupt is to try and do some experimental, never tried before electrical mechanical conversion to your boat that otherwise was perfectly efficient using a gasoline or diesel engine. You might think you're some sort of Da Vinci, but let's be honest. You have to have really deep pockets to do some sort of experimental boat building. It takes a lot of time and effort and money to make sure that such a project is even possible or safe. It can be tempting during an amateur boat build or boat restoration to add every sort of widget and the latest and greatest item that you might ever want in a boat. But you've got to edit yourself. I try to tell people, just stick with what works. It'll ensure that your boat restoration or boat building goes smoothly. The second largest mistake that I see amateur boat builders and boat restorers make is they fail to develop a proper budget. We are burning money! You've probably heard the expression that a boat is a bottomless pit that you just throw money into. Oh yeah. I always get a kick out of the people who say this because it tells me that they have failed to budget. Me? The whole idea behind having a budget for your boat restoration or boat building project is to know roughly how much money you're going to spend on it. This will inform you. It will help you make decisions regarding the things you're going to put into the boat, the level and quality of the finish you're going to try and achieve, and it'll kind of keep everything in perspective as you're working through your project. If you don't have a budget before you start your boat project, well, you can't ever hope to kind of stay on track and not overspend. You gotta have a boat budget. You've probably also heard the expression that a free boat is never free. And I gotta tell you, it's 100% true. You might get a free or almost free boat, but believe me, you're soon gonna be saddled with the expenses of paying to store it somewhere, paying to put it in and out of the water. Even if you do a budget restoration, you're still gonna have what we call consumables: sandpaper, blue tape, plastic, garbage bags, all of the things that you use in your shop when you're trying to restore an old boat. Well, you burn through those things over time, and the longer you work on the project, the more your consumable costs will be. All of these things have to kind of be kept in mind when you start putting together your boat budget. Now, you're probably wondering, well, how do I come up with a budget for this boat restoration project? And the answer is, that's where your experience comes in. If you've done at least a couple of smaller type of boats, you kind of get an idea of what materials cost. You get an idea of how long the projects are going to take. And also you'll get an idea of the ranges regarding the level of quality that you can hope to achieve in your project. If you don't have any experience, well, you don't know any better. And you will literally just be throwing money at the boat. And you'll eventually run out of time, money, and energy. Now, I promise, in another episode down the road, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the cost of the restoration of some of the boats that I've done before. I think it'll be very informative, and it'll give you an idea of the scope and size of some of these projects. But that's for another day. The final mistake that I often see people making in their boat restorations is they lose their motivation or they somehow get distracted. It's okay. Sometimes we all get a little exhausted. You've got to refill your bucket of motivation. I like to think about motivation like water in a bucket. When you first start your project, well, your bucket's pretty full. You're all excited. There's lots of ideas in your head. You've got a lot of energy to get started and really change your boat. But over time, well, money, effort, challenges, time itself, these are all things that drain your motivation. They're like a hole in your bucket. If you're not careful, they can totally suck out the life, your enthusiasm for completing your boat project. Even if you follow all the rules and you avoid all of the mistakes, maintaining momentum can be really difficult. My advice to you is to seek out boat motivation. Eat the elephant one piece at a time, and only look forward, never look back. Stay motivated. Don't quit. See your boat project through and realize your dream. If you're in need of a little bit of boat motivation, I invite you to subscribe to my channel and check out the boat motivation playlist that I have. There are stories of devotion and dedication to the idea of boat restoration and boat building. I think it's going to be something that you're going to want to see. I want to thank you for stopping by. We'll see you next time. Stay motivated.